I remember this specific day. I don't know what specific day it was, but I just remember this day in particular. I was no more than 6 years old, could be younger. I was sitting in front of the television on the floor, Indian style, like right in front of the television, and I was trying to ignore something. And you know, again, I can't go into the exact processing of my mind at that time, but there are certain thought patterns and things that pass through my mind that I remember to this day and time. Because, you know, sometimes we feel like, you know, we're out of our minds, and our imaginations, which are many of our creations, which are all of our creations, even then I question it being so just my imagination running away with me. Woo! Yeah, so anyways, I remember feeling uncomfortable, and I remember processing why I was feeling uncomfortable. I felt watched, and I remember sitting there trying to watch whatever show it was that I was watching, and the whole time in my mind processing this feeling, like trying to shake it off, that I was being watched. And then I started to think, how? Where? What's going on? Like, how am I being watched? Like, you know, like a little paranoid schizophrenic, you know, they would say. Yeah. Looking around and sensing things out and narrowing it down. I remember. Because, you know, since I could possibly remember, and my memory goes pretty way back, I've always seen things and I've always felt things that others don't see, feel. So, you know, is it really real? It's always been like that for me. It's not like some kind of trend or year that all of a sudden this started to spin. It's always been. And it is what created my curiosity for this spiritual realm of living, believing. I never doubted it, but I have denied it to myself without having to necessarily say, oh my God, I deny this life of myself. I don't believe this because not everybody else believes this. It just became something of a silent, non-evasive, don't go too deep into what you're seeing, but research and read about the things that they write about, these kind of things. So during those years of, like, from elementary school on, everything that I've ever learned about, you know, I remember being really fascinated with, like, ESP when I was young, extrasensory perception, and that came from what was going on with me. So curiosity, you know, that is me, entering into that kind of deep of what has been shared in the books that I have come across during those times, that elevated my mind. Because still, even in a lot of those readings, I didn't question the part of believing, because I am seeing, hearing, feeling, but I still kept the connection of that learning experience separate from my own. It was just a learning experience. So it's just like, I guess, in my subconscious, unconscious, but yet conscious, just not processing yet at that time the way that I do. I have evolved into. I wasn't infusing this knowledge with my own experience, but I didn't still at that point fully acknowledge the reality of that kind of experience in that kind of way. So anyways, I'm little, I don't know why Gumby comes to mind, because maybe that is what I was watching at that time. Yeah, I remember sitting in the living room in my apartment. Well, not my apartment, you know, parents, my family home. Two family. My grandparents lived downstairs. My aunt and uncle was still young, because, you know, my mom and my dad were teenagers when they had me. And so, you know, this two family household of my dad's family, we all grew up together in this way. So I was upstairs. In this memory, my sister, so I had to be about 5 or 6, because at this point in my memory, she didn't exist yet. She wasn't there. Because we're technically 6 years apart, but 5 years, because, you know, I'm a December baby, she's a March baby, so we've always pretty much been 5 years apart. And the mathematical part of the department of just like, I don't even know what the hell I said. I got nervous because there's mad lights, there's so much traffic right now on that side. But like, it's just always, it was always something that I've noted. It's interesting, because every time we were ever introduced to like anybody or anything, me and my sister, I'm the bigger sister, whatever, so I talked a lot. She was very quiet. She only spoke to me for a very long time, you see. Mute was she. And interesting how no adult that was in our world questioned my sister's silence. I questioned my sister's silence and her voice to my family, and they all called me ridiculous. It's like, you don't even know her voice. Stephanie, tell them, show them your voice. You know, that kind of thing. And I just look like a nut job. Anyway, so I remember sitting there in front of this TV, watching and internalizing this paranoia that I was starting to, I guess, sort through, because I know I'm labeling it now as paranoia, because it really wasn't. I was calm. It wasn't like I was scared or anything. I was just really trying to understand why I was feeling so watched, man. Like, whatever. And and then it hit me, the TV. And when I tell you that when it resonated during this thought process of it's coming from the TV, but how can that be? And then I was looking at the TV like, where can this be? What? They can see? No, that can't be real. But like, the feeling of how real it was of that being the truth of whatever it was that I was feeling of being watched through, and dismissing it too with my logical, rational mind at that time, saying, no, that can't be. But it made me feel fear in the sense of that immediately I turned the TV off. Got up. and went my merry way away from that and let it go. But this memory always present somewhere in my memory bank system of something that I do know that occurred 20 something, 30 something years, odd years later. That happened. And since that memory was very strong for me, even though it's not something that I took a dive in deep of questioning or trying to understand, like, where did that come from? It somehow never really went away, right? Something I can say with some truth overlaid. Underpaid. So there was a moment in that thought that I remember, like, you know, saying it can't be with this one, because at that time it was an old school TV, like one of those like box like TVs, or I don't know. And remember, I didn't have cable either, so it wasn't like I had a cable box or anything. This was straight regular television. I had the basic channels. So, you know, like I watched Channel 13 from New York, so, you know, PBS 13 and all whatever cartoons they had on their available networks. So even back then, I didn't really watch so much television because there was only certain hours of certain kind of shows that if I was to engage in, sometimes I wasn't available to, or like it wasn't anything that I raced to. I did watch a lot of movies growing up though. And my dad had a huge collection, so I get, you know, that was me in front of that kind of too. But like television, for me, it had to be a show that I liked, so to speak, in order for me to like really watch it, or like go at that time to watch it. Like, oh my god, 3 o'clock, this show's on, like something like that. So I was never a big TV head, but I remember growing up, that feeling of that kind of like being watched was my rooted truth that I never dove into, and even saying how, why, whatever. And now, flash forward, so many years later, and with the technology that we have and know of at this time, it's quite possible, right? You have people that talk about this kind of stuff all the time too, and then you have the critics trying to silence them too, like, no, like, you know, like whatever the case may be, like, that's not true. Oh, you paranoid people, like, you know, screw you, you know, like whatever. And I think about now how growing up with my daughter, she's always covered cameras. And I would always ask or laugh why, because how many times I've taken the stickers off, like my cameras on my computer, and then when I look at it later, I have a sticker or something back on it covering the camera part. And I would always laugh, like, let me wait, like covering my cameras. Do you want them to watch you? Do you want them to see? They hear? Do you want them like? And I would laugh, you know. And I just think how when you hear the world speak and they say certain things like this, like even people that don't really dive into like the research of it, of like, or like really listening to even what they're saying as well, or spreading as well. Like, I hear people all the time say they're listening, or, you know, our phones are not safe, or, you know, they believe. And then carry on, like, living. And then if you say anything that's too far-fetched of a possibility of being some kind of level of truth, like even things with like misinformation shared across these lands from the people that, or the medias that we do have at this time, those same people that'll say, oh, like they feel watched, or like it could be true, or anything that they say that sounds Looney Tunes, they'll fight with you and say how ridiculous something like that can sound, can't be real, or just ignore completely. Like, you know, I don't even know why I started talking about this, but it was just on my mind, and I was like, let's see where this goes. But I know that as I continue to grow and speak freely my mind, these words that will flow through me, channeling, you see, that's my belief of understanding at this time. Took me some time to get to that sweet acknowledgement that is my grounding force. The resistance that I receive from others, not all, there are many that are open to receive without blocking, even if they end up not fully believing or understanding it, what it is that you're expressing. Their level of evolution and growth that is rooted in their core allows them to know that they won't block or dismiss, even if they can't see it or feel it or understand it yet, because they know that whatever is going to be meant for them and received for them, because they're understanding this as a seed for them, will be received to them in their own divine right time, where a deeper understanding and truth from whatever seed is being implanted will be given to them, because it goes with another kind of root of knowing that whenever these kind of things emerge, whenever we ask, whenever we dive, that alone is our ticket to receiving that level of knowledge, understanding, and truth to come to you. But every individual is different, you see, because even in that kind of expansive understanding of receiving knowledge, many are met with the battle of time and patience. Because even for me, I had to break down and see that when I ask, and I really truly believe that when to ask, ye shall receive. For this has been a truth experiment for me since the beginning of my time in this lifetime, and for all lifetimes actually. But yeah, we won't go there. When I had to dissect and reflect, because impatient I was at best, because when I want to know, I want to know, and then the impatience with that, and then the not receiving of whatever it is that I know I'm going to receive because I asked, but impatient am I that I don't let the shit go and allow it to flow. So if you want to think of it in terms of like laws of attraction, of what it is that you're trying to get through control, when you're supposed to let go, you attract the very thing that you are not wanting to have, because the control that you're sending out into the universe is polar opposite from the belief that you're speaking, that you believe, but your actions are contradicting that inner belief. How can this be? So, I had to break that down, you see, for me. Because how is it that, I had to really question it. Like, well, then do I believe in this? This thing that it is that I'm saying, that, ask and ye shall receive? Or is there something missing there for me? And I had to really break it down through experience, you see, because that is how we learn. That is how we grow. It's our communion of life to grasp things right for ourselves. We are living wells. And I really had to process that. Is this something I believe, or is this something that I want to believe? Is this something that I'm working on to believe? Does this feeling really sink in deep? And then collective memories rushing into the forefront to answer these questions for me, to resonate with me of my own truth through my own seeing and experiencing, that everything that I have ever asked over time has been divinely, and even if it was intuitively or externally, however it has been gifted to me. And then making that kind of connection of when? Well, how long does it take? Is this a race? It's always been when I've let it go. And then the epiphanies received of just even acknowledging the time frame of what happened in between the question being asked and the knowledge being received, what happened in between that occurred, that took that time to receive it whenever it is that I received it. Hold on. Okay, so what was I saying? So yeah, so you know, these dissections that I naturally do, and then the observations that I make when I see it happen for others, and the connections that, you know, even though they're varied of an experience, and not everything is always the same for everybody, I'm not saying that, but you know, just like how we take these online tests or these studies that are done on humankind that break down certain similarities that allow the researchers to come up with, you know, labels, names, definitions, subcategories that break all these kind of things and functions into parts for us to understand. But you know what I think? There should be a class in school called infusion. Yes, like it should be the class that you have last period at the end of your day. It's the Shavasana part of your education filled day to further expand and seed into these lands the understanding that yes, we have different subjects, children, and you have learned them in parts, but understand that it's not separated from one another. Only the breakdown of the understanding of every single part is broken down and separated because of our human capacity, our brain's capacity at this stage in our lives and time, how it functions how it's told it's functioned, how it's conditioned to believe it's functioned, with the breaking down of information. Because every part, every subject, every piece, although taught separately and teach separately, and understood separately, is all being given for our understanding of the whole. So this infusion class should be the enlightening class that tries to explain that there is no separation, even though we learn it through separating, dissecting, labeling, defining, theorizing, and all this other stuff. Because what ends up developing over time is this separation that misaligns our foundations. We feel separated from absolutely everything. So the concept of unity and that we are all one is so far-fetched and hard to conceive for so many, because our upbringing has always been done separately, individually, isolated, and I'm gonna stutter when I say this, compartmentalized. Yeah, compartmentalized, mentalized during these times, and it contributes, whether one is conscious of it or not, to the habits, behaviors, forms, thought processes, and things like that that keep us in those separated belief systems, because that's all we know. That's how we grow, right? In this earthly lands of separation, you know? So Shavasana is still continuing to expand in my own lands of just understanding and the connecting of so many things, of how something so simple and what it represents for yoga applies to everything. It applies to everything. Like the same thing, like why we go to sleep, or why we take a rest, or why we take a nap, because everything that we did externally has caught up or has made us feel tired, that we must lay down, Shavasana, and sleep or rest and give ourselves that time to digest all that has already occurred during our course of the day. The same thing with yoga. When you do a set, whatever kind of yoga it is that you do, at the end you lay down on your mat, breathing in, and do whatever it is that you do. But do you know why? When I first started doing it, I didn't know why. I'm like, I appreciated it, because, you know, yoga can be something that's pretty intense. So the rest that you get at the end, when you're like, oh, this is my favorite part. You know how many people say, oh, this is my favorite part of yoga, the Shavasana, you know, because they have worked very hard in their sets, in their yoga exercise, that they look forward to this part of rest. You know, when I first was doing it, I looked at it superficially like that too. Okay, thanks guys. I'm just gonna lay here for a little bit, take that all in, you know, the exercise part. But it's deeper than that, because there's so much that you're doing on a physiological level, on a emotional level, on a cleansing level, like on just so many levels in this practice, whether you're conscious of it or not. That's why it's so much associated with like the esoteric spiritual lifestyles and living, because of a lot of the deep connection that is being made with our mind, our bodies, and our sensors, our cores, like, because it's a conscious exercise being done. It's not like you're just on the treadmill or like lifting weights or doing something that is just repetitive, even though yoga has moves that are, you know, repetitive and or flows that are repetitive in executing and doing, but so much more conscious effort of things is transpiring for the yogi, because a huge part of it is, you know, the breath and the breathing in to our body space, our mind space, our heart space. The effects of that alone is like gold. And anyways, what was the whole purpose of all of that? I'm gonna be honest right now. Like, I notice when I freeze up and when my flow stops, because thank you, guy. You were looking at me and making me nervous, and now I got to go in front of you as I wanted because you were slowing down to watch me. That I'm very sensitive again to other energy presences, other energies near me and around me, and immediately I know when someone's like looking at me. And that has been one of my many difficulties of speaking. Me speaking openly with people like looking at me. I've come a long way, because it wasn't like it's not like reading something or acting out something because you're executing something, so you're just doing it. But like when you're being open and people start looking at you, you're like, can you look at me please, you know? And so that was what was happening here, that it made me totally forget everything that I was saying, because, you know, I was feeling that. And, you know, and